So, yeah, we're live now.
All right.
And so, sorry, Scott, you were just telling us about your
Cool. All
musical
right.
background.
Yeah, my musical background, I used to do that. I used to do stage stuff. I did a little bit of film stuff, and then became a psychologist. At some point, as Seth and I had talked about some time ago, I um, I died. I went to psychology land from acting land. As happens, right? I did.
So you
I
met
did my
Seth
stint.
while you were
I
in
might.
acting land?
I
Can
was
I
kind
say,
of in and
Scott?
out. I was in acting limbo at that time. I don't think there's
Okay.
limbo anymore, but I was there nonetheless for actors. I was kind of doing some stuff, but I was also like starting to get into G and psychotherapy and stuff, and go back to school, preparing myself. Uh, yeah, so Seth
Wow.
and I met, and I worked with Seth as a lay hypnotist. Did some work with him, and I worked with a few of his people who he's worked with in his wonderful improv shop and acting coach business. And yeah,
He worked with my sister too.
then I died and went to psychotherapy land. Did
Wow.
I work with your sister?
You worked with my sister. Yeah, my
What did I?
sister credits passing the veterinary surgeon uh, test because of you.
When did it? Okay, all right. So I think I need a neurocognitive exam. I don't remember when I did that. When did I? Did I
Well, this
talk to her
was
on the
you
phone
were
or
in
something? Or?
Chicago already. It was quite a few years
Oh,
ago,
okay.
but there was
Wow.
some kind of story that we found. I think I found it, and it was about
Oh.
the squirrel-proof bird feeder. And the guy goes to the store, and people are like, what does this have to do with the president's analyst? But the guy goes to the store because it's selling a squirrel-proof bird feeder, and he throws down like $200. And because the squirrels are driving him crazy. Oh, this is why, because he had like, that was the only time he zenned out. Like, he was a workaholic, and the only time he zenned out was watching
Mm-hmm.
his bird feeder. That was the only time he had like bliss,
Mm-hmm.
when he was in flow. And then the squirrels would come in and piss him off. So finally, he goes and he buys the squirrel-proof bird feeder, and the squirrel, breaks into it, and he's pissed off. So he goes, and then he gets another one, and the squirrel breaks into it. And this is a Shaggy Dog story, so I'm not going to go into the details of like, and then the squirrel, does this with his
Okay, Norm.
hands, and
Yeah.
he's in, and then he gets the next one, and he's got. Anyway, so after a couple of these, the guy goes and he says, look, he's really pissed off. And the guy goes, sir, of course I'll refund your money. I'll refund your money for all of these. But can I ask you a question? How much time do you spend thinking about your bird feeder? And the guy's like, I don't know. I get up in the morning. I have my frosted flakes and a cup of coffee, and that's probably like 45 minutes. Dash off to work, and then I come home, and it's 6. And before I watch, my 7 o'clock news program, I probably get nice. And he goes, okay, so you get, let's say, 2 hours in. Let's round up. And the guy goes, okay, yeah, 2 hours a day. He goes, how much time do you think the squirrel spends thinking about your bird feeder? And that's the end of it. And the guy's like, oh, you're right. So we sent this to Suzanne, and then we hypnotized her that you hypnotized, you gave her a talk about, you went over stuff as you do. And then you gave her a talk after she had been exposed to this story. And then I told everyone I knew to just start sending her pictures of squirrels. And she passed.
Oh, wow.
With the hope that whenever she saw a squirrel, something that she studied would pop back into her head. And now her whole house is just covered in squirrels. That's the side effect of the whole.
It's
She
What a
collects squirrels.
fascinating story.
yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, this was the early days of the internet. So I think I was studying in John Strasberg's class, but I still had a lot of actor friends, and I just did a mass email. I was like, "This is my sister's email. Blindly send her pictures of squirrels. Like, go on Google, do an image search, cut and paste it into an email, and just send it. You'll be helping her." And
she didn't become self-conscious because of all the squirrels. No.
Yeah, I guess she
Okay.
she
But
says that
she's now a vet.
she was a vet.
Oh,
But to be a vet surgeon, you have to go back to take this test, and it's only
okay.
given like once or twice a year.
Oh, okay. Wow.
If we were a really good establishment, we would have an intern now finding out all the information about the veterinary surgeon test. And it's a weird, I don't know, my sister, I get my sister to
I
tell
mean,
me
it's
this.
it's like a medical.
It's considered one of the hardest tests out
it's
there.
It's more difficult to become a vet than it is to become a doctor just for humans, because you have to study everything.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that it's like this cross-pollination between doctors and vets is happening so slowly, but it is starting to happen because clearly vets have a lot of insight into things, but because they're not constantly dialoguing with doctors, they're not getting they're not probing the depths of their knowledge and getting as much relevant information to each other as I think that they could. To work better together.
You would think they would work more together, because like there were all those theories, which we now know are true, that like when you have an epidemic and you start using like lots of medicines on the people, the epidemic sometimes retreats into an animal population. It retreats into the woods and it stays there. And then come winter, it starts mixing back in with the human population, through pets sometimes.
Right.
So.
Yeah. No. And there is a movement. There's this girl who's a vet in Rhinebeck that's friends of a friend of families, and we had dinner with her one night, and she was talking about how there's like this emerging cohort of they've created like this sort of alliance between doctors and vets, because it is the same practice, especially once you get down to surgery and all these different techniques and all this. There's just a lot of different information that are relevant to each other, but it's a slow moving thing because again, there's a lot of ego and this. Excuse me.
Bless you.
With stuff like that, like I'm a real doctor who works with humans. Well, I'm a vet and I actually have to do this, that, and the other. That's how it is with people and disciplines.
Yeah.
But look at us. Here we are, three guys with three different disciplines coming together to discuss. What are we here to discuss today?
We're discussing the film suggested by Scott, The President's Analyst from 1967, starring James Coburn, the late James Coburn, and sadly, I think everyone is late. Godfrey Cambridge is no more. I think Severin Darden, who is one of the founding members of Second City, is gone too.
I think the girl who. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, who's Severin Darden? Which
he's the Russian.
Oh, okay.
He was one of Alan Arkin's really good friends at the.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
He is brilliant. And just for trivia, Alan Arkin, Second City member, first film. The Russians Are Coming. And Severin Darden, Second City member, also a Compass player before that, for those improv nerds out there and snobs. We know he was in the Compass, and then the Compass became Second City.
Joan Delaney, who plays Nan Butler, the girlfriend of James Coburn's character, I believe she's still alive, but she didn't work that much after her first few films, and there's not a lot of information about her online.
William Daniels is still alive, who was Dr. Craig in St. Elsewhere. He was in Boy Meets World for younger viewers. That's where they would know him. And then he was also the father to Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate.
Right.
And he was on Broadway. He was the guy who's not Jerry in Dog Story, the square, not the hippie crazy guy, but the square smoking a pipe. And he's smoking a pipe. And just to go back to The President's Analyst, Jerry says, "You're not going to get cancer with that thing, are you?" And he's like, "What?" He goes, "But you'll probably get one of those things like Freud had when they removed his jaw." The guy's just trying to smoke his pipe in Central Park. And I was saying to my mother, it always bothers me when people say Jack Nicholson is the same in every role, because there are guys who are the same in every role. William Daniels is a brilliant actor, but he's William Daniels in every role. And you know who he also was? He's John Adams in 1776. The film and the original Broadway production. He's like,
okay.
But Ben, We've got to get him to write the Declaration of Independence. It's just always this square Bostonian, flaring blue eyes guy who's a little crazy underneath it all. Like square, but crazy.
Like John Adams, yeah.
Like John Adams.
So wait, so let's tell the audience a little bit about the plot of this film. What is this film all about? And it's a first of all, it's a satirical film. It's a comedy, and it's somewhat of a satire of the spy film genre. It's clearly taking a lot of it's almost got a sort of Mel Brooks kind of vibe to it, in the sense of just like, spoofing other films that are popular at the time. Like if you were to say like something like Spaceballs, this is kind of like a 60s spoof of the spy genre, but it's so much more than that. Can you guys get into the plot a little bit?
Yeah, I wonder, like, contractually, is it the same film company that Coburn was with the Flint movies?
Okay, I don't know about Flint,
like
but I will tell you a piece of trivia I looked up.
Okay.
This is the first film that Robert Evans produced when he went over to
Paramount, or
I guess it was Paramount. Wherever The Godfather.
Paramount, yeah.
Yeah, it was produced.
He got to Paramount that early. Oh,
he got to Paramount. This is 1967. This film,
because we think of him as such a 70s like power.
Yeah, well, Coburn had met Fletcher, the director, who also wrote the script, at a party,
right,
and loved the script and gave it to Robert Evans. And Robert Evans was forced to change FBI and CIA
to FBR and CEA.
Yeah, and he didn't want to do that because it was Robert Evans.
But in retrospect, it actually makes it so much better.
It's so much funnier
because it just turns so zany. Like, I mean, it doesn't do anything to piss them off any less. I don't think. I don't know why they would have been pissed off. Although this was a very sensitive period.
Well, this is
American
like, you figure,
history.
like, the zeitgeist, right? I don't think they knew it when they were making it, right? They probably made it a year before, or 6 months before, or something, or whatever it was. And that would have been 66. They probably filmed it. So it's 67. When are the Flint movies? Do you know offhand?
I think they're later. Does anyone?
Wow. Okay, so this is pre-Flint.
It's pre-Flint. Yeah. Now.
Wow. Okay.
I think
but you have to think about how divisive everything was then, and it was heating up to this. Like J. Edgar Hoover, right? He was after everybody. He had a list of, your grandmothers were probably on J. Edgar Hoover's list because, they marched somewhere to support civil rights, right? Everybody was on his list. So that's why Hollywood was not going to, want to provoke the CIA or the FBI.
Right.
And at the same time, there was a whole lot of things like MK Ultra was still going on, right?
MK Ultra was probably this was like the golden age of MK Ultra.
Yeah. So like people.
This is when they were discovering that. This is when they were really making headway with that program. Mm-hmm. That's probably still going on to this day.
So this movie comes out. There are 4 James Bond movies, Connery Bond movies at this point when this movie comes out. After this movie, Connery takes a break. Lazenby comes in for one movie. Mm-hmm. They fire him, and then they pay Connery to do Diamonds Are Forever and come back.
Yeah.
So this is also on that. I think it's interesting to know that when Bay of Pigs happens, Kennedy says something to the effect of, it would have been great to have some James Bond guys around for this. And that he was an avid reader of Ian Fleming.
Absolutely, yeah.
And From Russia with Love was the last movie screened for him.
Mm-hmm.
For Kennedy
before he was assassinated.
And we should mention to the audience that am I correct in saying that they actually refer to the president as Kennedy in this film?
I don't think they do. The only president they mention,
or they reference Kennedy in the film.
They reference Truman.
No, I think.
Well, Truman was kind of dead by then.
I know.
It would have been Johnson. It would have been Johnson
Kennedy,
at the time. Johnson.
This film is taking place during. I thought this film is actually supposed to be taking place during Kennedy's
No,
I don't
no,
know.
no, no, no,
I don't.
no. Because if you look at what happens about like uh
Oh no, because you have the hippie stuff.
about
I
halfway
don't know
through, right? He
why I
like
thought
he
that.
hooks up with hippie girl.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He
exactly.
hooks
Yeah.
up with a bunch of hippies, right? Which so obviously this was made 66, 67, right? This
Right. Of
comes out
course,
in
it wasn't
67.
made, during it, but I thought for
Right, but
some reason I
there were
thought there was
no
reference to
hippies.
Kennedy in this film.
I think the references when they go to the liberal's house in the suburbs, right? The zany, like everything's
That's
kind of
right.
backwards. They have the kids pointing at 357 at him or something, and like, and they're like they're
Yeah.
trying to
Isn't there a
strong arm
reference?
all the
Isn't
Republicans.
that the scene where there's a reference to the
He
Yes,
guy,
you
the
says,
know,
guy
you know,
we're
we
saying,
voted, we
liberal.
voted
We
for the
voted for
president.
Kennedy."
Yeah,
No,
you
they
know,
Or
he
say,
we
says
we're liberal, like
No, I
the
remember that
president's
part.
like our
liberal.
president,
Like
who
our
was at the
And
president.
time
I voted
Johnson.
for him, by the way.
And
Okay.
Johnson, of course, at the time was pushing the whole Great
The
Society
Great
thing,
Society
right?
program.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
yeah.
course. So, okay, then the thing I was gonna mention is it's interesting we don't ever get to see the president.
No,
No.
You know,
nope.
he keeps we see him walking in and out of the room. Not only that, not only do we not see the president, but we have no idea of a single conversation
No,
that took place between them. There are no details of what they talked about. It's just implied that there's some really heavy shit that this psychoanalyst knows, and now the whole world is after him for one reason or another to try to extract that information from him.
precisely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It happens all the
So,
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, what else is going on? Oh, well, also, there's something about this movie that's very interesting that you really can't make this movie now with most Hollywood stars because at the time, like James Coburn was known as an action guy. Like he liked to act, and he played a certain role, and he, like so many others in this transitional period, was starting to go to Italy and doing spaghetti westerns. He does Duck You Sucker
Sucker. Yeah, that was
with
71.
71. Yeah, but he had already done Magnificent Seven, and the thing about Coburn that's interesting is he looks like this, but he's also studying with Bruce Lee. And if you watch documentaries on Bruce Lee, Coburn's in a lot of them, and it's the real Coburn, not act. Well, the actor Coburn is revealing himself behind the mask of his characters, and he is like this. I swear to God, he's like, Bruce finally found his satori at that period. He was really finally in his hipness, and like I was like, oh my God, this guy is like totally a swinging '60s, probably pot smoking, doing LSD and therapy guy. Like he
Well,
wasn't.
that's the thing. I mean,
Yeah,
he would have been sort of like an older cool guy during the
Yeah.
hippie thing.
yeah.
He was in
So
his late 30s, early 40s during this period, and so he was just like kind of probably hanging with the next generation because he thought what they were getting into was cool.
So I
Makes
think this
perfect
was like
sense.
the opposite of when you see a guy who's like totally straight in a
Who
comedy. What it
accidentally
is like
finds
when you see
himself
somebody
in a
totally straight in a comedy and you're like, wow, they're wacky. Or
yeah.
somebody, for the other thing, who's a comedian who goes and does a straight part as a villain. And you're like, oh, this is creepy. You don't see that as much. You see
Mhm.
comedians, if they're really good comedians, once in a while, play sensitive characters or off characters, or you'll get some directors like I knew I could, get a dramatic performance out of him. But when you think about it, first of all, there are less and less American action stars who just do action, and that's what it would be like having David Strathairn do a comedy in this movie. Like that's and a wacky comedy, not like the one that he did with The
So
Rock.
you're saying that that Hollywood would never produce anything like this today, precisely because it's too out of step with what they would want to actually.
I think they would. They
It's
could
not safe.
try
It's
to
not
do it
safe.
Well, I
It's
don't
not.
understand. Can you
if
formulate a
you.
little bit better what you
Yeah, yeah,
mean
yeah. I
by
think that
no,
like
hang on. By a
yeah,
movie like this. What is this movie like?
this movie
Because
is like
what about this movie wouldn't
it's
be
a
done today?
it's a comedy, right? And you need a guy who and he's also cast against type. Like if this movie was made today, they would cast somebody like who looks like a psychoanalyst, and instead of getting a straight
I don't know,
guy
man. I think like
to play a psychoanalyst.
this movie is so zany that
Yeah,
it's sort of like I think there are actually a lot of parallels to films today. Like when I'm watching this movie, it doesn't. There's never going to be quite anything like it because it's so unique. But
Yeah,
it evokes Mel Brooks, but it also evokes the whole mockumentary kind of style of filmmaking. To me, it really evokes Sacha Baron Cohen.
I guess it does.
And like if you look at his movie about the dictator that he made, or
I
you know,
guess
it's
what I'm trying to
different.
say
But
is we think of actors differently now. Like Coburn is like actually doing his thing, his brand, but he's like in another universe now.
right,
That's
I
what
see
I.
what you're saying.
That's what I'm. And he's playing up things like he's always like squinting his eyes and showing off his big teeth. And
Well, it's also a style of comedic acting that's just changed a lot.
a
Like there's
lot.
still that kind of thing, but it's not done that way anymore. It's the you know, it's
Yeah.
too much like of a certain era.
Yeah.
And you know,
Well,
it's that's what's one of the things that's wonderful about this film. I'd say the first thing that really grabbed me about this film, just from the very beginning, is I grew up in New York City. I love New York City, and I love watching films from different periods of time that have such great shots of New York City. And this film has this beautiful opening shot, right? Like
Yeah.
it's just sort of
Yeah.
it's not a bird's eye view. I don't know the technical name for this kind of shot, but it's like a diagonal overhead shot of a wide shot of the city street where you can see New York, and it's like a lot of New York is in a lot of films, but sometimes even when it's shot locally, it looks like it's done in Hollywood, even though it's
There
in New
is a
York.
shot in
This
this,
is a
by the
very
way,
New
of
York
New York.
shot. What?
I just remembered a shot in this movie that we have to talk about that will
What,
never
the
be done in a movie
the
again.
Statue of Liberty
The
shot?
Statue of
Oh
Liberty.
my god. I had to pause
shot
the film
from,
at that
I
point.
guess,
Dude,
a
that
hot air balloon. That's not a helicopter.
it's not a
shot.
helicopter, it's a hot air balloon.
I
Yeah,
think it's
because
a
I was
hot air
looking,
balloon.
dude, I had to pause the film at that point because there were so many questions I had from that shot.
So refresh my memory.
Okay.
Describe the shot.
So there's a shot like I think it's right after he gets the job,
Yeah.
where he's just sort of like he's excited and he's going all over the city, and you see him just kind of like looking out at New York from the observatory in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, which has not been accessible to the public since 1919, which I found out because I had to stop the film at that point because the shot was just so incredible. And I was like, and I went down this whole Statue of Liberty rabbit hole because of that moment. And it turns out like it's very hard to get. There's this crazy crawl space in the shoulder of Lady Liberty that you have to sort of like weave your way through, and it's very difficult to get to in order to get to that balcony part. And it's you can still get there, but only maintenance guys go there, and nobody. I don't think they'd ever do a shot like that again for a number of reasons. But it's incredible, like that, and it's just
And it was James Coburn. He's in it, right? He's actually
yeah, he's in it. He's there. It's James Coburn.
He's a big lanky dude who had to squeeze through
and
this crawl space.
Yes, and the balcony of the torch is really low. It's like lower. It's like maybe 2.5 feet high or something like that. And the wind blows, that thing moves up to 4 feet or
Lots of
at a
hairspray.
time. It's crazy, but I'm saying like it's dangerous. That was a dangerous shot. And also, it's very interesting. Seth mentions that it's a hot air balloon, which answers a lot of questions that I have because to rent a helicopter to do a shot like that in 1967 would have been it's expensive enough today, but I looked at the budget of this film. The film had an incredibly low budget, and that shot what was most shocking to me about it was like this shot doesn't look like they could have afforded it on that budget. But if you're saying, I don't know how they managed it, but
it has to be a hot air balloon shot because first of all, there aren't that many guys flying helicopters in 1967. There was a huge boom in helicopter pilots because of Vietnam. Because all these guys got PTSD and, got jobs as flying traffic reporters or flying, CEOs or going to Hawaii and doing tours over volcanoes and stuff when they got back. But I don't think there were that many jobs for guys, especially in Hollywood.
Right. And who's going to get a helicopter just for this one shot for a movie in 1967 with a $2 million budget? That was the budget of this film.
Well, it is Robert Evans, so he probably had some.
He might have some friends. Yeah.
On this, but I think it moves like a hot air balloon shot.
Was that just from you looking at it, or did you?
Yeah, I looked at it a couple times, and
it doesn't look like a helicopter shot.
Yeah, and the thing also I want to talk about this since we're on this theme is this cinematographer went on next year to do a little movie called Rosemary's Baby. He went from
Oh
this
wow,
movie
wow,
in
wow.
1967, which means he left this probably. His agent probably called him and said, "When are you going to get off this one? I have this Polanski movie that Robert Evans is doing." Or Robert Evans probably put his arm around him and went, "How about you make a movie with this crazy Polish kid that I've got, this hot book."
William Ashman Fraker.
Yeah.
Fraker.
And he did another movie that year that's one of his biggest movies. He did two movies in 1968, but one is Rosemary's Baby. He probably became the darling of Paramount at that.
Well, I got him pulled up right here. He did Bullet after that.
Bullet with Steve McQueen.
Yeah, directed by Peter Yates.
And Steve McQueen was also a buddy of Coburn, right? And they both studied with Bruce Lee.
Oh, get this, dude! He did the sequel to The Exorcist.
Oh wow!
Which one? Which one did he do?
Exorcist 2, the worst movie ever made.
It's the best worst movie ever made, perhaps.
Richard
perhaps.
I mean, it's one of those. Yeah. I don't remember it at all, but
the cinematography is very nice. I have to say.
My understanding is it's probably quite good technically, but the acting and the story is all screwed up from what I remember people saying.
Oh, I just
John Borman, right? John Borman. Yeah.
6 Degrees from Charlie Manson. Anyone can do it through the people we've mentioned.
Well, Polanski, and Polanski. I believe if you read, was it Chaos, the book by what's his face? Oh wow, it's an Irish last name. I should know, right? He's like my cousin or something. I should know all my cousins, right?
Wait, this cinematographer also did Father of the Bride Part 2. I didn't even know they made a sequel to that.
No, they did. They absolutely did.
Okay.
But the other and MK Ultra.
Oh, Tom O'Neill.
Tom O'Neill.
Tom O'Neill.
Chaos. Book about Manson, MK Ultra, Roman Polanski, and everybody associated with that house that Sharon Tate.
Well, wasn't Roman Polanski taking martial arts lessons also with Bruce Lee?
I mean, Sharon Tate was taking it for the.
She was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think after it happened, Roman suspected Bruce Lee for a little while because
suspected him of being involved with the
murder,
program
because he was so weird and violent, and there was that Occidental Oriental thinking. I know I'm using the wrong words, but I'm being historical. That's how.
That's how people talked at the time.
That's how Roman. Someone book I read on Roman described it.
To quote the FBR, that's being racist. Stop.
That's being racist. Yes.
Yeah.
Wait. So, okay, yeah, that's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great movie. The J. Edgar Hoover art. Did anyone catch that?
No, I didn't catch it.
FDR office. The camera pans and there's something weird, like a lady's hat looking thing on his desk, and I didn't know what that was. And I watched it several times, but the camera pans past this strange Greco-Roman statue, and it's two naked men wrestling, and it looks like one is almost 69ing the other one,
right?
Because the other one is facing down with his legs up, and he's being grabbed like that in his head, and that's in the office. And then I also thought of who was the FBI guy who stepped down? Comey? Was that Comey?
Yeah. You mean the director, Comey?
Yeah.
That was.
Did you notice how tall the extra is who comes in with the message during the scene where we have to kill him? The FBR scene. There is this giant. It's disturbing how big this extra is. He towers over everyone.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And supposedly Comey's like a giant. He's like 7 feet tall.
He is. He's 6'7".
Yeah, he's a huge dude. But I don't think he had anything. I don't think.
No.
Born. I mean, he was probably like 2 when this film was.
I know, but I'm just saying.
But what I can't get over are the themes being so relevant now in this film. Racism, civil rights.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane.
Spying, social media,
the internet. Yeah, right.
It's like.
Yeah, I mean,
and also the theme of people like losing their humanity and wanting to check out from. You got the hippie thing, which is not. which isn't there hasn't been a new renaissance yet, but there will be. There's gonna like I'm seeing it with this younger generations. Like they're really starting to like they want to go back and rediscover the earth and get away from this
And do LSD.
do LSD and whatever. Yeah, yeah. Psychedelics are
yeah.
becoming really, really popular.
Yeah, it's like
And
drinking water these days, right? You know.
yeah, but people are
But
trying to like expand their minds out of this like we're dealing with a lot of similar structural issues in society today as people were dealing with in the 60s.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's just that the structure that's like kind of like falling apart because basically the hippie generation, right? As Frank Zappa said, LSD is a very dangerous drug. It turns hippies into yuppies, and
yeah.
yuppies, like so basically you're going to see a lot of Gen Zs and later millennials kind of like they're going to be left. Well, I think everybody's going to be left with whatever the boomers have left over, like X for me, probably X for you guys, or millennial.
Yeah, I'm like right
There's
on the
not
cusp. I
there's
think
no
Gen
there's no
yeah.
structure, like left because they won't give jobs up, or they die in office, or they
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting when William Daniels says we're liberals, and when I say liberal, I mean liberal like we're not far off to the left. Like
We're not far left. Yeah, he makes
he
that
makes
distinction.
a point of
like somebody today would try to make a distinction
like
that.
I'm not Antifa. I'm a centrist liberal. I'm like like that's
I'm a liberal,
that's how I
but
talk
at
to
the
people.
same
I'm
time,
like
though,
apologetic.
but the irony of it is what's really funny is that it's a little different because he's like, I'm a liberal, but like he's painting conservatives as fascists or his neighbors as people that he
yeah, he says my neighbor
American
puts up
flag
the
out
American
every
flag.
morning.
like they put the flag up.
Real fascists should be
real fascist kind of stuff. Yeah,
Doesn't he say
there's people
they
today
should
that
be
would talk
gassed or something?
Yeah, yeah. He's making clearly this director is making fun of, and I think it's the director. Can we talk about the director for a second?
Yeah, talk about the director.
So
and writer.
I had never
wrote
even
the script.
of course he wrote it, and I'm gonna say something. This director, and this is gonna sound. This director is not a filmmaker. He is a TV writer.
Okay.
This guy never did any films, hardly at all.
Yeah.
He did this film in 1967. He did Spin Out right before that in 1966 and Up in the Cellar in 1970. And aside from that, everything is television. He was on, he was a writer, I guess, writer director for The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Bill Dana Show, The Rogues, The Andy Griffith Show, The Dick Van Dyke Show, I Dream of Jeannie, Spin Out, Nichols, Spin Out was a movie, sorry. Nichols, Night Gallery, Banyan, The Mod Squad, Streets of San Francisco, Guess Who's Sleeping in My Bed, Banachek,
Banachek,
sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me, it's before my time.
It's
Barney Miller, Just
Miller.
a Little Inconvenience, Last of the Good Guys, and Jacob, and then he did a film which was like one of the last things he did called Jacob Tutu Meets the Hooded Fang, which is like a adaptation of a children's novel. So this guy really is not a movie guy; he's a TV guy, and that kind of like, a lot of for a lot of people in Hollywood, like the idea of being a filmmaker is like that's super prestigious. The idea of being like a TV guy is sort of like on a lower level. But the reality is that, like, especially then, and nowadays TV is in a completely different world now. But especially then, but the reality is that like if you want a guy who actually knows what the hell he's doing, get a guy who's basically producing and writing and directing and filming every week. New episode. I mean, this is a guy who's got chops, and clearly a guy who it doesn't matter that he doesn't have a lot of experience making movies. He made an amazing film, and it's super original too. So, like, I think this is a
well, the fact that sorry to interrupt, but
go ahead.
that this is pre Matt Helm, or not Matt, probably even pre Matt Helm, right? It's pre Derek Flint, right? Our man Flint, in like Flint.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was the other way around. I thought like Coburn had like something to work out, like as far as like a contract, and he's, oh crap, I got one last, hey, let's do this, Robert.
No, but this actually
Robert
predates
Evans.
Those.
It predates it, and probably is what snagged him the role of Derek Flint in those kind of
probably,
even
So what's the most famous Derek Flint film? Like,
I think Our Man Flint, I
Flint,
think,
yeah.
right?
Our
Yeah,
Man
like,
Flint,
and
okay.
that's the one with the weather, the evil geniuses that are run by Dr. Smith or Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith is actually played by an Asian guy. It's just, it's just, it's like
Right.
back at the time, everything is so stereotypical, right? And like they're breaking all that. But those movies are even zanier, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
This is a strange combination of like Man from Uncle, Bond meets, I don't know, like a satire of American culture at the time.
When
And it's
did Mel
perfectly
Brooks
blended.
do Get Smart?
Good question.
Around the same time, right?
Around the same time.
Yeah, 67, 68.
Because this whole spy genre just blew up
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
early 60s. And I guess it was something that everybody could enjoy, even in a time when you think about it, like you think about the 60s and you think about like hippies not going to this, but it's just the same thing as like leftists going to like a Marvel film. And I remember going with a bunch of yoga kids
Yeah.
to Captain America 2, where it's revealed that Hydra is Shield and Shield is Hydra.
Yeah.
And they left and they were like, yeah, that's exactly how it is. That's exactly how it is, man.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah, you could see people from all different political walks of life thinking that this movie is speaking directly to them. You know,
yeah, we'll
like
even make fun of that. Like
that's
the
how Frank.
guy
I
who
mean, that's why that was like the genius of Frank Zappa. Like, if you're
Yeah.
like some stoned hippie, you're like, oh yeah, it's far out. If you're some like intellectual
did you
classical
guys, speaking of
musician, you're
Frank
like,
Zappa,
you know,
did you know that the guy who plays Old Wrangler that's Daniel, what's his name? It's an Irish name. He should be related to you, Scott.
I'm sure he is. Yeah.
He's the guy who sang Eve of Destruction. And he
Oh,
is on one of the record uh, of Frank Zappa as a big inspiration. And Zappa was not free with praise to other musicians.
very
At,
few. Yeah, I know that the Zappa, like in roundabout, if you're a friend of 70s Black Sabbath, Volume 4 is probably my favorite album of theirs, and that was like
which
they were
album
Volume 4,
of?
Black Sabbath.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and he was like totally into that guitar sound, like Tony Iommi,
Oh yeah,
another great Italian, right?
yeah.
And a great guitarist, and like he thought that they were like, and if you listen to what he was doing around that time, it's a bit of a
well,
segue, but
here's the
like
thing. I mean, like, I think,
apostrophe is like
yeah,
basically that could be lifted from that, like sessions with Iommi and Geezer Butler, right? So
certainly his
anyway,
sound, certainly
yeah,
his sound, and I think that there's a big misconception about Frank Zappa. He very much wanted to be a legendary rock star from the beginning,
yeah,
and a lot of his curmudgeonly anti-pop persona is really from the later years. Not to say he didn't make fun of like Louie Louie or whatever back in the '60s, but like he liked the Rolling Stones and the way the Rolling Stones sound, even though Rolling Stones are nowhere nearly as musically sophisticated as he was. He liked that. He liked rock and roll clearly,
yeah, yeah.
but it was like later in time, I think, that he started to become like, kind of insulting to and looking down on popular music. And I think it's because popular music was going to shit. And he was right. I think it's a
Well,
fair
yeah,
play.
yeah. It at that time, like at the time this movie was coming out, as he describes it, the A&R people didn't know what to do. I don't even know if they had A&R people. The guys with the chomped
They were
cigars
the
at the
new
record.
the
Yeah,
A&R people were that was a new industry. That was like a bunch of hippie
and
kids.
hippies. Yeah, they say, "Hey, kids, what are kids listening to? I don't know.
I don't know.
Sign
Check
up the
this out.
Mothers of Invention." Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
exactly. And this is that
and
this is like that juicy period before 1969 when everything like when if you talk to your average like kid who doesn't know anything about rock and roll history really, but like knows who Jimi Hendrix is and like, knows about Woodstock or whatever,
yeah.
like people don't associate like the rock and roll hippie period to like 1965, 66, 67. 69 was the summer of love. That's when it started. But clearly this stuff was like starting earlier than that. And there was other stuff, there were other interesting new movements brewing, but I mean most of the icons that popular icons are associated with like the very late 60s.
Yeah.
And maybe
Well,
that's too fine of a point.
I'm going to have to disagree with you there. And 67 was the summer of love.
Oh, I thought it was
69
69 was Woodstock.
69 was Helter Skelter
Helter
and
Skelter.
Woodstock. It
Yeah.
was the
And when's
end,
Altamont?
basically. Right?
When is
Yeah.
Altamont?
So
Yeah,
I'm clearly
69 is what,
I'm
70?
clearly the
79 was
poster
Altamont?
child
Yeah.
of that generation of ignorance. Yeah,
That's
67.
okay. That's
right.
okay. I think, I'll think back on this conversation and say, man, Aaron didn't know when the summer of love was. I was 2 years old when that happened.
We
I don't
should,
know. It's just, yeah, it doesn't matter.
we
It's in
should
the
do the movie The
perspective.
Limey. I've said this
The Limey.
before, and I'll say it again. But the movie
Okay.
The Limey is about it's two guys from the 60s coming back from two different places. So it's Peter Fonda is the bad guy,
Right.
and he's Captain America from and now he's a record producer in LA. And Terrence Stamp, who was the swinging 60s in London, gets out of jail and finds out his daughter died while dating Peter Fonda. But there's a line, the reason I'm saying this is Peter Fonda says to his very young new girlfriend, who's like 18, and Peter Fonda's like 68 years old. He goes, there was a time when everybody knew the language. But I'm going to tell you the truth. It wasn't the 60s. It was just the tail end of 67 and all of 68. And and he's like, and I think there was a thing. This is another thing I realized about this movie. People look different now because of dental work.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at an old movie, you're like, well, he's got big teeth, or they've been hugely capped, or like Hollywood.
Who are you thinking of when you say
thinking
that?
about Coburn? I'm thinking
But
about
Coburn he looks like he has like perfect great teeth,
big
right?
teeth, and that was also true when we covered The Swimmer with
So that doesn't speak well of dentistry. They seem to have better teeth.
No, I think dentistry has evolved amazingly, and you can see people look different. People always write in to like Reddit and go, "Why did people look so old in World War II pictures?" And they're like, "Well, they lived through the Depression, so they're all malnourished.
They're malnourished,
and they went through horrible times. And now they're seeing like the worst war ever, when they were promised there would never be a war like that again. And people grew up faster and died younger. So yes, and you look at Civil War soldiers, and they're 15 years old, and they look like they're 34 years old. And I was always like, well, that stops around a certain time. But then I was watching this movie, and like, there's a look. Also, Godfrey Cambridge has these huge choppers too that are probably caps. You can, also in this period is the period where if you watch, I think it's the first Connery movie, the first Bond movie, Dr. No. Then afterwards he does Marty, and Hitchcock said something like, "Could you please stop showing me your dentures?" And a speech teacher said Connery's slur got worse because of his denture work that he could afford after the first Bond movie. So there was a thing about capped teeth. You see it on game shows too.
Like you hear references to it all the time, like in Woody Allen movies. Like if he's trying to, if he's trying to denigrate somebody, he's like, this guy in California with his capped teeth. Like you hear, nobody gets nobody uses that terminology anymore, at least.
No, they don't. But I do think that dental hygiene and dental work was not so hot back then. I'll point out to my late parents, God rest your souls, they had terrible teeth, and they both had uppers. They had partials by the time they were in their 50s, because dentists would just say, well, hey, man, we're just going to pull these out because, they're just going to rot in your head and it's going to be painful, and we'll give you a partial. And a lot of people walked around with partials. So there's that. And they were Depression era babies, like tail end of the Depression era.
Sure.
So I think that a lot of things have improved since then. I'm glad my dentist can take my X-rays like that, and I don't have to wait for them to get developed anymore.
Oh yeah, man. Remember when Martha Ray had those commercials for take it from a big mouth. Like you don't see that anymore. Like nobody takes their dental workout and puts it in a glass overnight by the
No.
I
night
hope not,
table.
unless they
And
have
then like
to.
wake
Yeah.
up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, I forgot to put my dentures in. I guess I'm going to eat oatmeal.
And this is
I mean,
obviously this is a TV commercial for an improved version of dentures, right?
yes. She
Yes,
had these giant dentures,
state of the art.
Martha Ray.
I think the
and she
closest
would-
thing we have to that now is like a sleep apnea commercials for.
I
you know,
have
the-
seen on the internet people wanting to perfect their smile, and there's this weird kit with like they scan your teeth with your like cell phone.
Oh yeah, of course.
There's that,
That's
but
yeah,
that's private corporation. That's like little guys in their garage.
but it's also not obscene.
Yeah.
Like you take the stuff, you put it in overnight, and your teeth get whiter and straighter, and whatever. Yeah.
So there's that.
Definitely, I think we think of the '60s as being like not that long ago, but that was quite a while ago. I mean,
and also, speaking of someone who's had a heart attack and has two stents, one titanium and the other one might be because it's some kind of ceramic, because I signed up for some experimental test. Severin Darden and Godfrey Cambridge are both dead of heart attacks very young in their lives. And that was another thing in the 60s and the 70s. Like everyone was dropping dead from heart disease. Like, and they're both guys who, if you're in the acting community, these. I mean, I'm one of them. Guys who like yo-yo, and people were always like, "Don't yo-yo. You're better off staying fat than yo-yoing." And guys like James Coco and Dom DeLuise were yo-yoing all the time. And Godfrey Cambridge was one of those guys. He died, I think, at 47 years old.
Godfrey Cambridge was the African-American
actor.
Comedian, right? Yeah, actor, yep.
Comedian. He was in Watermelon Man. He was in Beware the Blob. He's in this other movie.
Watermelon Man. Wow.
Yeah. He was in another movie where he speaks Yiddish. He's a cab driver in New York. And he speaks with this and everybody loved him. He was one of the biggest comedians after Bill Cosby, who was African-American of his time. And
here I have a quote from Time magazine in 1965.
Yeah.
Calling him one of the country's foremost celebrated Negro comedians.
Yeah.
That's 1965. So he was like a stand-up guy.
He was a stand-up, there was a
Nipsey Russell, Dick Gregory, Bill Cosby, and Godfrey MacArthur Cambridge.
Yeah.
Those were the names at that
Those were the names. And I guess Flip Wilson came later. But I mean, he was revered. I think he was doing like the Borscht Belt, because like my grandparents used to talk about it.
Well, he must have learned Yiddish somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know, a lot of African Americans who grew up near Jews in New York City could speak Yiddish. Colin Powell speaks Yiddish fluently. Shout out to Colin Powell.
Wow.
Yeah. He grew up in a carpentry store.
I'm not sure, but
it
I
was
think
a
it was
toy making store or a carpentry store.
Wait, who are we talking about?
This is Colin Powell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And Colin Powell didn't want to go to college. Yeah. He wanted to learn the business and stay there. Yeah. And supposedly this mentor of his was like, no.
Yeah.
You've learned Yiddish, go to college, and save the free world and topple Iraq. And, but he was a big deal. I remember him as a kid, a little trivia. He made a film, like a don't do drugs film in 1970, maybe. And it, ended up being your nurse's best friend for like 45 minutes. She didn't want to teach.
Wait, what film is this you're talking about?
This is Godfrey Cambridge. And Godfrey Cambridge, I remember this film. He's like there and he's like, sometimes you feel like you need a pill, but you don't really need it. But the pill is available. So you take it and the pain goes away. But then you need another pill. Like it was, and now we would never have that because every kid is on a pill.
Right.
So yeah, he was an interesting dude, and he died. Here's a little trivia, and this is a little weird considering the international relations that are played out in this movie. He died playing Eddie Amin, and Eddie Amin said it was God's work.
You're saying that his last project was
He
him?
died. It was unfinished. Was to play Eddie Amin in
Oh, so they never made this film.
He died making it.
That's crazy.
And Eddie Amin commented, because he was the last king of Scotland.
Yeah.
So it was God's work to strike him down from being able to make this movie.
To make a movie about me, the last king of Scotland.
Yeah, we would have to wait another several decades before Forrest Whitaker would do that.
I think someone else made a movie. The guy.
But could it possibly be as good as Forrest Whitaker's?
It wasn't, but it's a good actor. It's the guy who is in Alien, who was in Homicide. Life on the Street.
Yaphet Kotto.
Yaphet Kotto, who's a brilliant
great actor. Yeah.
Great actor, Yaphet Kotto.
So, so Godfrey Cambridge is Guyanese.
Is he?
Well, his parents were. Yeah.
Okay.
But a lot of the black screen actors from the 50s and 60s were from the islands that are not possessed by the United States, but near us.
By other, you mean Sidney Poitier and
Sidney
Harry
Poitier, Harry Belafonte
from the islands.
Yeah. But Guyana is not an island, of course.
Right.
But it's a British, controlled. It was a British controlled region at the time. Yeah, that's cool, man.
So we should talk about
Godfrey Cambridge.
We should talk about the things that are relevant to today in this movie that spooked us.
Where do we start?
Well, I would say that the telephone,
the phone company is probably the central theme here.
The idea that they're going to put a phone in your thumb and it's run by your brain probably seemed
that was
crazy
good.
back then, but it seems like some serious shit that Elon Musk.
I think Elon Musk works for the phone company, TPC, the phone company.
Yeah. Well, he wants to do, what is it called? Neuralink. The reality is what he's saying is actually kind of true. He's like, listen, you guys walk around with these phones all the time. Anytime you have a question, and I'm doing it now for this show, I'm going in and Googling stuff so that we can, get more information while we're talking. And that's not going to stop. Like, the reality is that, we walk around with this thing and it's just slow. It's like, why wouldn't we try to, I mean, we basically are cyborgs already. We're just slow cyborgs. And so why wouldn't we want to have, I don't personally think it's going to work because I don't think people want to put something in their brain. And, I just don't see it. It's not, I don't see how that's going to be healthy. But it's already bad. It's pretty bad already. I mean, we're already there. We may as well, we're one step away from having the chip in our brain. This is like an appendage. What happens when you leave your home without your cell phone? That's everything in your life. You can't conduct business without it anymore at this point. It's not just about texts and emails either. You want to, buy stuff or download something. You need apps to do things in all these different places. You want to read the menu at a restaurant. You need your damn phone to scan the QR code, So the movie is very biting satire and prescient too, because we are living in a lot of the, to a great degree, in the stuff that they're joking about in this film, I think
so. I mean, well, have you guys ever read, talk about that idea of prescience? Have you ever read E.M. Forster's short story called The Machine Stops?
No. Tell us what it's about.
It's a dystopian short story, a very good one, about humanity thousands of years, or maybe not so many years in the future. He wrote it in 1920. And people, of course, they travel back and forth to these different enclosed kind of bubbles, or they didn't have geodesic domes, but contain cities in dirigibles, and they do not breathe the air because it's so poisoned. And they communicate with each other on these kind of TV screens. They live in little cells. They hardly ever travel, and they use pneumatic tube technology to send information to each other because there is no idea of like an internet or email or things like that. But it's basically the way we're living. It's almost like everybody who
But they
like
live
saw.
underground. They live
No,
underground
they live above ground, but in like these domed cities.
because
And of
the
course,
air is
there's
so polluted, or
yeah, yeah, and of course, it. I won't spoil it for you, but somebody actually escapes, and there are people who escape and whatnot. But like that's kind of like people have been thinking we're becoming more and more machine-like and trapped in caves of our own making. I think even back like in the 1920s, people were saying this, right? I think Aleister Crowley said that. People are becoming more ant-like. He was like referring to like Victorian stovetop hats and the way they all like congregate like bugs to watch other bugs on a football field or whatnot. Sports events. People are becoming more and more insectoid like. So people are. I think we're kind of getting. There's something in the air, right? But certainly this movie with this phone company taking over your brain is an extension of that. It's like, and it's so true in a lot of ways.
right? Well, what do you think in like 1967? What do you think people were particularly um uh what are the associations to the phone company like? Like what are all the different notes where that would resonate with people at that time? Did people feel like they were being spied on, or at least the important people were being spied on by the phone companies, or through the
I
CIA, or
I think so. Like the scene we talked about, the liberal scene where they're in the house and he puts on his sunglasses. I have to make a very important secret call. He goes into the bathroom and he
That's yeah. That's
and the kid
exactly halfway into the
and the
film.
kid's on the other line listening in,
Yeah,
right?
halfway into
and
the
but if you look
screenplay, the
outside
main character is on the shitter calling on the phone. I was like, I wonder what halfway into this movie is exactly. So I took, because you can do that, and that's in a
yeah.
screenplay that's right in the middle. That's where you want your main character in the belly of the whale or in a problem situation. And I was like, oh my god, this is brilliant. So, but anyway, go
It's
on.
so perfect. But like when is it Joanne Woodward who plays the wife? Who is it
No,
who
it's someone
plays the
else.
No,
wife?
no, I mentioned her, the girlfriend, you mean?
No, the wife
No,
of
the
William
wife
Oh, the
Daniels,
wife
wife of the
of William
the
karate,
Daniels. Yeah.
the karate
yeah.
wife.
Let's see. I'll
She
pull
goes
it
out
up.
to meet all of her girlfriends and get in the car to go to her karate lessons. But if you look across the street, there's a van that says TCP. The phone
Oh,
company.
really?
There's a van parked
Okay.
across the
There's
street.
a
So
lot
like
of signs
listening
in
in
this movie, by the way.
where you
As the
yeah,
movie goes on, the signs get weirder. But
yeah, yeah.
there's one I saw. Oh, it's Cafe Wa. But then I looked at it the second time, and on the avenue and the street say Cafe Wa too. It's not just Cafe Wa on McDougal Street.
But was it? But that was the real thing, though.
That
On
was the real
McDougal
Cafe
Street.
Wa,
Yeah,
which was owned by the uncle of Diamond Dave.
it's
Dave,
it's still there.
it's still there, but the sign for McDougal Street has been removed, and it says Cafe Wa. And you can see the other one, which goes down the alleyway. I can't remember the name of that. Something Lane. It says Cafe Wa too. They also walk past the store, and the name of the store and the neon sign in the window are Hasidic clothing. Hasid
Oh yeah,
clothing.
Hassan clothing. Yeah, that was so weird to me. I was like, well, obviously they have stores like that now, and they had stores like that then. But what was weird was
Was
his
that actually
deliberate.
filmed in New York? Was that filmed in New York or
It
was
was
it
filmed in
filmed
New
in
York.
That's filmed in
oh,
New York, I
Yeah, it's
think.
filmed in New
all right.
York, and
All right.
but the deliberateness with which he chose that
It's
scene to
like a
be featured
cartoon. Yeah.
multiple times. It's exactly like a cartoon. It's like
Yeah.
Acme, but it's Hassid clothing.
um
So what did you look up at the wife?
Oh, you were saying, what did you say you thought her name was?
I thought it was Joanne Woodward from Laugh-In, right? She was a
No,
pretty
I
popular.
can't figure out because I cannot remember the name of the character
Uh,
in the movie. So,
Does
she's
she have a name?
Quadrille, Mrs. Quadrille.
Quantrill. Oh yeah,
Quantrill.
yeah. Jeff Quantrill is her name in this. It's Joan Darling.
Joan Darling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joan Darling, she's still alive. She's still with us.
Okay.
I don't know much about her.
She's probably connected
Oh,
to
she's got quite a career as a film director.
Really?
She directed Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories, a TV
Oh, wow.
series. She directed Magnum PI. She directed Taxi, First Love. She directed the TV adaptation of the TV series version of MASH. She directed the Mary Tyler Moore Show
Wow.
and Phyllis and Rhoda.
Which are spin-offs of Mary Tyler
Mary
Moore.
Tyler Moore, right.
What a strange name for a female, Jeff Quantrill.
That was the name of the character in the film. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
very strange.
Like
and
and
Jeff
Win
Quantrill and Bing Quantrill.
and Win Quantrill.
What is a Quantrill? Is that a
Win
musical term?
Quantrill.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Quantrill.
No, the Quaver is the QU musical term.
Okay.
But so kind of getting back to this, the main theme about the television company being, or the telephone company being so all pervasive and all knowing. At the end, I mean, the three main characters kind of like get outside of the system, like one by happenstance, one because he's becoming paranoid because people really are after him. And I think we lost you there, Seth.
Yeah, what happened to Seth?
I don't know.
He's back.
And then one, of course, the Russian guy, Darden, he's analyzed briefly by Coburn on the boat where he's holding him hostage to take him back to Russia, right, to get all the secrets. And like within like a matter of minutes, he realizes he didn't love his father, the KGB spy and decorated war hero. He hated him. He's like, yes, good. Like he turns him around and like in minutes, psychoanalyst. I'm not sure how his African American spy friend, what's his name, Godfrey Cambridge, I forget, but they all kind of go against the film, like against not the film company. Sorry, Warner Brothers, but they go against the telephone company and kind of like save humanity briefly.
Yeah, it's like a hero. It turns into like this whole heroic mission. When in reality, all he's trying to do is escape this horrible, dilemma that he's in. But it turns out to be like this heroic mission of all of them. And
but it's kind of like in a way, it is kind of, I guess, hope for humanity, sort of, right?
Yeah,
asserting itself and getting unplugged, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, Godfrey Cambridge says we got to save him because I got to get back to analysis before I flip out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the best. It's like the best line at the end of the film.
Yeah, it's so relatable, and it's one of those lines where, like, if you were a serious writer, you'd be like, I can't use a line like this. But if you're a comedic writer, you get the laugh. It makes sense at a certain level. And
wait, Scott, Seth told me that you said that this is one of the most accurate portrayals of psychology or psychoanalysis. I don't remember psychoanalysis. I don't remember what.
I tell when people ask me, being kind of the cloth, I guess, of psychology and psychotherapy. It's my favorite movie about psychology, psychotherapy, because it has nothing to do with it.
Oh, okay.
I think it is the most accurate interpretation of it. I think. Actually, I would say that probably one of my favorite, and I think is the best interpretation of a relationship between a therapist and someone dealing with something very heavy in psychotherapy is Ordinary People.
Right.
Oh,
Judd Hirsch, right?
Yeah. That's
great,
a
great
real
film.
tearjerker of a film right there.
Took place here. Actual case here in North Shore of the Chicago area. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and it's filmed here. So it's like my office is a little bit above Judd Hirsch's office, and like probably by a story or two. Now it's very dated, but at the same time, it very much it's a pretty accurate portrayal of what can happen to work through trauma and family issues.
It's also, I think it must have been really inspirational to like Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for Good Will Hunting.
Oh yeah,
it's like clearly the blueprint for that kind of a movie. What are some other really good movies with psychotherapy or psychoanalysis in them? It seems like there's a lot of them. I mean, it's in like
Yeah.
every Woody Allen film, obviously, at least as part of the thread. But
Well, in a way, I think we analysts and psychologists and psychotherapists deserve things like Woody Allen references to therapy, because it is kind of ridiculous what we do on some level.
but
It's very
it
helpful.
but it's also, it's being a therapist is similar to being a priest. It is a religious relationship for secular people on a certain level, and it's actually it's grown beyond that now, but I think that it's sort of like thematically has some of that going on when we tell it in stories. People are like going to tell their
Oh
deepest,
yeah,
darkest
yeah,
secrets
yeah.
to somebody. But I mean, it's a
I
fascinating
think you have to be
relationship.
pretty
There's so
weird to be
much
a
there.
psychotherapist. Yeah.
You have to be weird.
Well, there is, right? You have to be kind of weird. I think you have to be. I hope you don't buy everything you say and do hook, line, and sinker, and you're just trying to help people see things more rationally, right? As I've talked about this with Seth on a number of occasions, both in public and in places where I'd never tell anybody or say anything. I'd never repeat the things we talked about or our secrets here. But I
Only
think
on
that
YouTube.
theater. That's right, only on YouTube. I think theater and film, but especially theater, I think has more of the energy of psychotherapy and vice versa. I think Jeff Zeig is a student of Milton Erickson's and a guy who's made a lot of money and helped a lot of people interpret what Erickson did. Who's a very famous psychotherapist and psychiatrist and hypnotist. Uh, he talks about he's got a whole book on using improvisation to improve your therapy. And he went out and took a bunch of improv classes. And as this is, I think that there's a book you mentioned that we never actually got around to talking about. What was that? Improv
Oh,
for the therapist.
yeah, that it's out of print. It's called Rehearsals for Growth by Daniel Weiner and Gloria Maddox, who was my
Yeah,
teacher when
great.
I was friends with Dan.
Another great book. Same concept, right? Because what you're trying to do is help people have catharsis, right? Which psychotherapy didn't, that's kind of stolen from Greek theater, right? Catharsis and theater, right? I mean,
Yeah,
uh, so I
absolutely.
think it is. I think there's more ties to shamans and to like,
Well,
Asclepions and Greek theaters and in healing processes, right? I
well,
mean, all
absolutely.
of
You
the
you
Greek
you
dramas were part of that. Yeah.
if you don't have the Greek tradition, so to speak, um, philosophical, theatrical, all of it, you don't have Sigmund Freud. I mean, it's where he got almost the concepts of subconscious, and
Well,
he
he
got the Pulitzer Prize for literature, for God's sakes, Freud. I mean, he was a literary
oh
man,
yeah, yeah. I
and
think he
the
Yeah, a lot of
process.
people
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know that he and Breuer kind of stole hypnosis ideas, and Freud was not very good at it, but he was also a neurologist, and he wanted to help
sure,
people with hysteria, so he borrowed heavily from Greek myths, to try and concepts to kind of help people grow their brains, if you will,
right.
and break out of things. Yeah. No, it is a very literary aspect to it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's interesting.
Um, I think I just realized as we were talking about this, I can trace three other two films and one TV series that this movie predates. That could be like the children or grandchildren, and that's analyze this, where a killer is, confessing to a shrink. But a few years before that is Gross Point Blank, which is even more like this, where Alan Arkin plays the
Yeah.
shrink, and when he hears that
Yeah.
the killer is actually a corporate assassin, he's like, I don't want to see you anymore. Go get out of here and go to your high school reunion. And then Sopranos, and
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
of the idea of someone who kills, whether for a living or on occasion for business purposes, is that's revealed to their psychoanalyst, and they have to deal with it. Here it's funny because he's like, wow, that must be great for you because you have a license to kill. It actually it's a great outlet for you for your anger, and also could be considered moral.
Yeah, I know, it's brilliant. I mean, I was hooked on this.
Yeah.
This movie had me hooked from the very beginning. But the fact that that was the first dialogue that was really featured in, like, after the guy kills the Albanian gangster or whatever, the fact that that was the first main dialogue of the star of the film with Godfrey Cambridge's character, that had me hooked. I was like, I know that this guy's a real craftsman. Whoever's writing this is going to be an entertaining story, because that is a great opening.
And the
You have a
transition
license
there,
to kill. What a great outlet for your anger. I mean,
yeah,
great. And it's
the
even moral.
transition into that rationale is this beautiful monologue, which is played straight
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally
by
straight.
Godfrey Cambridge about
know.
racism.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
then he says he makes me hate myself, so I want to kill and hate others. And then that, goes into the scene where it's revealed.
Where it's placed in the film, I imagine being in the theater in 1967, and you don't know what you're going to be seeing, and you see that first scene, and then you hear that first drop dead monologue, and everybody's like, and then the lines dropped. It's almost a waste. It's almost a wasted line because it's funny, but it's not. It's like it's just so weirdly, like, the whole film is kind of, is it funny or is it not funny? It's like, it's difficult, I think, for people to wrap their heads around, or maybe people were laughing out loud in the theater back then. I don't know. But such a poignant opening scene. Is this the first time you've seen this, Abram?
This is the first time I've seen it. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
And I was way too young when I saw it to appreciate it.
And I hadn't even, I had only heard it a couple times from Seth mentioning it here and there. And I talked to my folks. I asked them if they remembered it. I talked to some other people who are of that generation, and like, this was not a well-received film.
No.
It's not like people hated it. It just sort of flew under the radar. It did not make a big splash in its time, and it really only became a cult classic many, many years later. And I think has really fallen into relative obscurity because most of the people I talk to have never heard of it. And I tend to know, like, about even movies I haven't seen. I've, like, heard of them. I had never heard of this film. And it was a real treat. I really appreciate you suggesting this to us. Like, this is a perfect fit for what we've been doing, and it's really great.
Yeah, you're very welcome. It is one of my favorite films, just because it has so many elements, and somehow, like, you just don't think they would work together, and somehow it works.
Yeah, it's damn near close to perfect film.
What would you change in it, Abram, if you could, to make it like
nothing? I don't like perfect films. Like, if you want to go see a perfect film, go watch, like, Steven Spielberg or James Cameron or whatever, which is great, but that's not my thing. I mean that you couldn't make it. I don't think you could make this film any better than it is. It's
Wow. Okay. Wow. I think it is it on any lists? Is it on any, like, best of lists?
Not that I'm aware of.
It's
I mean,
definitely been received as a cult film. It's mentioned by Rotten Tomatoes that it lives now on as a cult film.
Well,
and then,
here's the legacy. I'm just reading from Wikipedia. In the unpopular culture section of Wikipedia, there's an internet fax service called The Phone Company that took its name from this film. So, like, if you're trying to fax something online, there's a like a app, like a newer kind of like internet fax thing.
I'm gonna switch my business fax now to The Phone Company. TPC.
Switch it to The Phone Company.
Yeah,
Shout out to
TPC
The
all
Phone
the way.
Company.
they're watching.
They are
actually,
watching.
This shot that we're in right now on Zoom is the final shot of the movie that The Phone Company is watching.
They don't even
Exactly.
Seth, they don't even watch and listen anymore. They have other machines that
No, I'm just saying to the viewers, when you watch this movie, then watch how we're shot on Zoom. It's exactly the same as Godfrey Cambridge being buzzed in with the fake snow falling on his hat.
In mind, I think.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's buzzing Scott.
Oh no,
Scott!
No, I'm back. I'm back now.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right. I think that when Steven Spielberg made great movies, they were not perfect.
Give me
Now
an
they're perfect.
example. Give me an example because I'll sit here and shit on him all day long if you want me to.
Oh, you're welcome
Um,
to. I think Jaws. I just saw Jaws, although it was stupid to have it like
Jaws is not a
turned into
perfect
3D.
film.
It
No.
is not, which is perfect.
And
Which
Close
That's
is
why it's
Encounters is
good.
not a perfect film either.
which one?
No,
Close Encounters.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
and
You know,
that's
they're his
why
two best films.
they're watchable films.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Everything else he did after that wasn't even really a
Although
film.
I like Munich. I like Munich a lot. I don't know
Okay.
why. I guess because
Every time I
it
watch
was
Munich,
dark.
I have it and I've seen it many times. Every time because I'm very interested in that.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm interested in that event. Let's say.
Okay.
I've watched that film a number of times. Every time I watch it, I like it less.
Okay.
Which usually doesn't happen. That's like very rare for me with a movie. The first
And it
time I
was
saw it, I thought
yeah.
it was great, and then every time I watch it subsequent to that, I'm like, yeah, this is Spielberg doing that thing that I hate, which is like making he just uses film to manipulate people's emotions, and it's so
Well, it's
propaganda. His
okay.
style is so propagandistic,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
I just don't want to like it. And he does it in a way where he makes you feel like you're watching a film, but it's actually propaganda. And it's like I I forgive him for what he did with Schindler's List because I can't imagine what he had to go through to make that film. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
but
I did.
that film is like not a good like that. But that film does not do what he wanted it to do for history. I don't think they
I,
made me watch that film in school and like I don't think that is a good advocacy for like trying to explain the history of what actually happened in that thing. And the fact that he picked like a movie that just sorry, this is completely unrelated to what we've been talking about, but the thing that really gets me more than anything, it's like you want to do a film about our people's greatest modern tragedy and probably one of humanity's greatest tragedies, and it's
yeah.
not going to be centered around us. It's going to be centered around the heroism of the righteous Gentile who you
I
could have picked many other stories, and you did that because you wanted the Gentile. You thought that would be the thing to get Gentiles to care about what happened. It's like, why
I
can't we just tell our own story? And that's how I feel about that on the
ouch.
one hand,
Okay.
and I hate many other things about that film. But
Okay.
anyway,
Well, I did know someone who was Jewish, a friend of mine, who's a big film buff, who saw it, and he recommended instead of that, he recommended The Last Butterfly.
I never saw it.
I've never seen that. I'm now
Small
going to see
movie,
that.
sure. It's a very small independent '90s film. Around the same time, it's about I think a French resistance guy who's also like a theater guy who gets stuck into. It's kind of coming up a blank. It's a very good movie. It's small. It's about being stuck in a concentration camp, like and being part of like you know uh, when the Red Cross would show up to here we're actually doing theater, that kind of nonsense, right? And it's a very tragic film, of course. It's a very beautiful film, but
Right.
what he said was, "Hey, man." At the end of Schindler's List, and probably people are going to hate on me for this, but where he says, I could have done more. He says, yeah, you're right. You could have not been a fucking Nazi in the first place, my friend said. Which was like, wow, you did sum that up pretty well. I'll let
Listen,
you say that.
I don't agree with that from a historical standpoint, and I'm going to defend
Schindler?
I'm gonna defend Schindler, and I'm gonna defend Spielberg
Okay.
on that note. I understand why he did that in the context of his film. That's a small point for me. That's a minor point. I
Okay.
think Schindler was a great guy, and he did the
Okay.
right thing. And lots of people who loved Jews sold Jews out, and lots of people who hated Jews protected Jews and did good things for them when they saw it's. You never know what the hell you're going to end up doing in those kinds of situations. It's so crazy. The main problem that I have with the film,
True.
aside from the fact that they picked him as the subject of it, is that this was a film, much in Spielberg's style. He wants to make you feel what it was like. And you cannot do that to people. Like that's what he does with Saving Private Ryan. We're going to show you what it was like to be a soldier in that situation. No, that's not how you do this. And we're going to make the whole world know what it's like to feel like they were a Holocaust survivor. Because if you talk to any Holocaust survivor, they'll tell you, no, that movie was tame compared to what we went through. You
Yeah,
can't.
Oh, of
I
course.
have a
Yeah.
story
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not fair or right for you to do that to your audience. Like, your audience is not just a bunch of little fucking toys for you to play with their emotions with. And that's why, you know, I have a
I,
problem with him as a filmmaker.
I,
And
I,
by the way,
I
I'm not,
agree. I
who
agree.
the hell am I? He's one of the greatest filmmakers ever. The fact that he was able to do that, but it's the same reason I hate Wagner. Wagner is a very talented, skillful composer. I don't agree with what he chose to do with
All
music.
right.
I don't want to listen to that shit. It's not music. Just like Spielberg doesn't make movies. Those are not movies. It's something else. You're
Oh my
great at
God.
that. But
Yeah.
fucking Wagner, at least he admitted that he wasn't trying to be a music. He was like, no, I'm trying to do something different. Yeah, you're doing something different. I don't give a shit. I don't like it and I don't care for it. Like,
Um,
go do you, you know?
Well, I will say that I think the stakes are pretty low for Spielberg when he started to get a lot of money, and then he didn't have, like, it's like the wheels came off.
I
Ridley
respect
Scott.
the man. Don't get me
Ridley
wrong.
Scott is a very similar thing
But Ridley
in that
Scott is actually, you can maybe even make the argument that this guy knows how to make perfect films that are great.
he
Like, in
does.
perfect, that I love on every level. Like, Blade Runner is a perfect film.
But Blade Runner, did you ever hear the
Which cut?
backstory?
Which cut?
Right,
They're all,
exactly. Which cut?
honestly, no, okay,
But
fine.
but
It's
but but
not perfect, but
Blade Runner, it's not a perfect movie, and
it's not,
it
but it's so
it
great.
would have been like, uh, I guess Ridley Scott at the time had a lot of people convincing him not to do things that would have spoiled the film. Like, I don't know what exactly was. He had people kind of editing it, right? He had an editor, right? It's like the first Star Wars film
Yeah,
had
sure.
an editor save it because
Yeah,
Spielberg, cool ideas, but he just didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Lucas, right?
yeah.
Same period. Um, wow, we got on a tangent here.
No, it's great. I love
Um,
tangents. But Ridley Scott, man, I think he might be my favorite of the blockbuster giants.
that I would
I
probably
just think
say.
he's so good. He is the definition of a virtuoso who just has all the goods, you know. I just really, really love Ridley Scott.
Okay.
I don't know what it is. I like, damn, he did so many great films. My goodness. And they're all these are blockbuster type films, but and I like all these like weird indie films, but I'm saying, man, like, could you ever get bored of like Gladiator or American Gangster or The Martian? That was awesome.
But none
I
of
mean,
those films really are perfect. Like, you like
okay,
imperfect films, and really
you know what
Scott's
I mean, though.
films are technically brilliant, but a lot of them are experiments, and I think he also does this very well.
That's true.
He
They
did this
are.
with his brother in the
But none
company.
of
Like,
okay, when I say
oh, let me,
a
can I
film is
finish?
perfect, sorry. When
Okay.
I just want to clarify something. When I say a film is perfect, is that there's not a single dull moment. There's nothing that doesn't belong in it. Every moment is enjoyable.
Yeah, this is
You
why I
don't
want to
agree
do
with that?
a Black Hawk Down show with a few of the people I know from Black Hawk Down, because
That's a heavy one.
Black Hawk Down is a great movie, but it's all action. Like, there's
Yeah, it is experimental in that
it,
way. Like, he
it
is. Yeah, I got to give him credit as like kind of being, man, that guy takes crazy risks. That's the other thing. You're right, Seth. He might be like kind of like the polar opposite of
and if
Spielberg.
he
In that sense.
doesn't
There you go.
succeed with something, he takes aspects of what did succeed in the failure and he uses them in the next movie. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
Morocco didn't work for Black Hawk Down, but I made a good relationship with the King of Morocco. I'll do the Last King. Was it the Last Kingdom?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah. And you know what's funny?
In Morocco.
I've heard that's
so
a
many of his-
fantastic film.
No, I
Yeah.
haven't seen that. There's so many films of his I haven't seen. I got to go like down the. I got to go down the
I've heard
Ridley
that the
Scott
cut,
rabbit hole.
the
Shame on me.
director's cut of that is really great. I saw the
That's what
original
I've heard.
cut, and I was
Okay.
like, oh my God, what I feel.
Did
And
you
that's a
see
good
House of
movie
Gucci?
that's a good movie to talk about something that I don't have beef with, but I know some people do. It's really hard to get into like medieval mindset. So like that movie at the end of it falters because it becomes the main character would never have that point of view.
Right.
Like he's standing on the walls of Jerusalem and going, this belongs to all of us. It belongs to the pagans. It belongs to the Jews. And that just would never happen in that age. Plus, that guy wasn't even there for that battle. That character historically was not
What are
even
they
there.
talking about when they say this belongs to all of us?
Jerusalem.
Oh, Would they not say that though in the medieval time? I think they would have.
No, not right
Which
before a battle where a bunch of Christians are going to be slaughtered by a Muslim horde.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
It belongs to the Jews. It belongs to the pagans before them. It belongs to the Christians.
Well,
Belongs
it's
to
something.
Dude,
It's something the League of
was-
Nations tried to say.
Yeah.
he would have
It
stopped in
literally.
the midst of his speech and said, "Wait a minute, I need to find the chamber pot. I'm going to shit my pants." And,
Yeah, I think it's like I think it's more like I'm gonna shit my pants. Oh, and by the way, those of you who are here, these battles get so crazy that if you don't fight on our side, you're probably going to be raped and pillaged anyway. They're not going to believe you're a Muslim who lives peacefully in the walls of Jerusalem. And if they do know you, they're going to ask why. And that was a weird period that I don't think even like if you did an HBO series on the Crusades, you could understand it. But I have heard historians
I think that
we're totally off the subject.
sorry.
But that is the best portrayal of Saladin in any
Really? Okay.
film.
I'm sold. But I think to your point, I think we do a better job of depicting the Roman Empire than we do medieval stuff because the Roman Empire is much more similar, I think, to the world we live in today. The classical world has more in common with the world that we live in today than the medieval world, or at least especially like the Middle Ages. During the period of the Crusades, there was a crazy, very, very unique period in human history.
Yeah, but I don't think you get how normal violence was in the Roman era. Like the Romans, like for entertainment, were always torturing.
Well, that's but that's what I'm saying though. I think any human would get it. I'm not saying that we're similar. Like obviously, there's so many things that are different.
Right.
The Roman period was so much more extreme, but we have so many more parallels into our behavior and the way that we deal with those kinds of appetites. I mean, the idea of a coliseum where people fight each other, like people can understand that today. It may be not quite nearly as brutal today, but we still do that. We still have a hunger for that. The way that we the banquets where we eat 20-course meals and I mean the excessiveness of that culture, and because it was in a lot of ways it was a wealthier culture. It had more technology and wealth and goodies than people in 11th or 12th century Europe had.
I think Scott, as a psychotherapist, should comment on this because my comment is like, now bulimia is available to everyone, not just the emperor and his friends.
New and improved bulimia.
Yeah.
I don't know what I can say as a psychotherapist. I'm in a small box. I'm not in a grand cinematic box.
Well, I'm just saying some of the things that were excesses and luxuries to like the Romans are now kind of middle class diseases.
Exactly. That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Gluttony. Yes. Gluttony and yes. Issues of what you look like and whatnot. I think so. I think you could probably make a pretty good argument for that. Yeah.
We have the best bread and circus though today than any humans have ever had in history, though. That's for sure.
Well,
I mean, just free entertainment. Like,
but that goes back to like the whole phone company in this movie. It's like anything.
Oh, look at Seth tying it all back.
I'll bet that if you look really closely at the chestnuts that are littered in Ridley Scott's Gladiator, you can see signs that say TCP. They're behind the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
All the goddamn emperors, the Octavian, Suetonius wrote about that you can't, it's a missing chapter from Suetonius on the 12 Caesars, right? It's gone. You can't find it anywhere.
Well, isn't like the Praetorian Guard technically those guys? Because the Praetorian Guard killed Caligula and then said, let's get his retarded uncle.
No, actually senators killed him, but then they were like, hey man, we're the phone company. We need an employer.
So listen, guys, we're coming up on an hour and a half, and this has been an amazing conversation. And I just got an inspiration for an actual technique that we can use going forward to select the next film.
Okay.
Here's an idea.
Okay.
Whoever's up next or whatever, we all discuss it. So it's not a matter of that. But somebody pitches a movie that has to be adjacent or somehow related to the last movie we did.
Okay.
And it can be like more or less loose. So like if we were to take this film and think about films that are similar in terms of either it's a movie about psychological, psychologist relationships, or a film about like, political satire film. Come up with something that's related to this. What's the first thing that comes to your mind, Seth?
I told you already I would like to do Parallax View,
Network.
3 Days of the Condor, or Network.
What about Wag the Dog?
Or Wag the Dog. Yeah.
Okay. So let's pick. So you've seen all 4 of those.
Yes, it's been a long time since Parallax View. I think the ending of 3 Days of the Condor has a chilling similarity to the ending of President's Analyst.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a reveal about the company while a Christmas song is playing, and then the movie freezes. Spoiler, sorry, people, but
it's okay.
That's the end of 3 Days of the Condor.
3 Days of the Condor. So I've only seen of those 4. I've only seen Network and Wag the Dog that I can remember.
Okay. I think Network and Wag the Dog are the perfect back-to-back movies.
Yeah, those 2 should be done together.
To play for where we are now in terms of media and government. I would love to do a show or a double show where those 2 movies are back-to-back.
Where we talk about them in the same show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe or 2 shows back-to-back. Yeah. I think I've always thought.
You want to do those next?
Great double features. We could. I haven't heard from Judy, so I guess we could. I wanted to do I Spit on Your Grave and growing up with I Spit on Your Grave next,
and then get Dan to do
and
that.
get Dan. But it's
you know what? I haven't picked one in a while, so I'm gonna say let's do that double feature.
Okay.
And then we'll circle back to the other one.
Okay, so we're going to do a Network back-to-back with
Wag the Dog.
That's a great double feature, yeah.
So obviously we're doing Network first because it's earlier film. But anyway.
Well, okay. Well, this was a fun conversation, guys.
This was fun, man.
It was great.
Yeah.
Do you have this much fun on your own podcast?
I do not. I am absolutely, I'm so anal retentive on it that it's